me talk to you about what I call the 6 basic human needs. The 6 basic human needs. The idea of human beings having a few basic human needs was first espoused and written by a guy called Maslow in a book called Maslow's Hierarchy of Human Needs. A lot of people in Western education systems study this. If they're going into medicine or education or social work, they may have read Maslow's Hierarchy of Human Needs. A more contemporary version would be Tony Robbins and contemporary voices like his that have taken up a more modern version of this, but still keeping intact the idea that every one of you have minimum, perhaps more, but minimum 6 basic human needs. And the idea in life is this: if you don't find out what your primary basic human needs are, then you are working against your fundamental happiness. 6 basic human needs. I'm going to tell you what they are, then we'll look at them each individually. The first human need is certainty. The second is variety. The third one is significance. The fourth is love and connection. The fifth is growth. And the 6th is contribution. These basic human needs, like the ego, are not good or bad, but without guidance and without an enlightened soul, they default to what they shouldn't be for you. We all have to figure out what our basic human needs are from that list of 6. What are the most important to you? If you can figure out your top 2 basic human needs, find out your top 2, then these top 2 human needs that you give yourself to will give you a lot of happiness in your life. That's why it's important to know about them and then find out what they are, and then intentionally give yourself to choosing relationships and career paths and interests and spheres of life. Choose them based on, is this going to strengthen my primary human needs? They're not wrong or right, and they're different for us all. You've got to figure out what yours are, because here's where this gets difficult for us as humans. If you don't know what your human needs are, then you will go through life ignorant of them and suffering because you are not intentionally feeding your human needs. So what happens is, when you got to avoid what I call human needs incompatibility. So Mr. Certainty marries Miss Variety. We're going to have a problem here. Or Miss Love and Connection marries Mr. Significance. We're going to have a problem here. And since I've done, I do mentoring now, as some of you know, around the world by Skype or FaceTime. And this is a big issue I've had with a lot of people I've been helping that are corporates, CEOs. In one case, I was mentoring a guy recently, and he is in his midlife, been married for over 30 years, and he's in massive problems at home with his wife because he wants to start his own rock band. And his wife is like, what is wrong with you? Like a midlife crisis, like he needs help, he needs fixing, he needs therapy. Is it some like childhood life he's trying to relive? What is it? It's been a massive issue. between them, arguing and so on. So he's asking me for help. So I said to him, well, I think you wanting to be a rock band is coming out of your human need for significance. So is your career. A lot of people, by the way, that are entrepreneurs and business leaders are that because they don't know often they have a human need for significance. Now you can imagine, can't you? Any of these human needs, so significance can go really wrong in feeding that human need. Doesn't make the need wrong. It makes the expression of it wrong. So many people's need for significance gets them into lots of trouble. You know, it gets them into crime, you know, the 15 minutes of fame by doing something terrible, or drugs, or violence, or dominating and controlling and abusing of others. So the basic need of significance can be expressed very badly, but it can be expressed brilliantly. A lot of people go into politics and these great careers that do a lot of good for humans, and the basic human need was, I need to do something significant with my life. It's not about applause and ego, because that can appeal badly to the need for significance. A lot of people in show business, a lot of people in acting, a lot of people in music are enjoying the accolade and the applause because it feeds their human need for significance, but it's rooted in their ego rather than their soul. So it becomes about them rather than serving humanity through my need for significance. So don't sit there thinking, I must be a bad human because I have a need for significance. No, it depends how you express it. So I said to this guy, your wife needs to see that you have a human need for significance, and being in a rock band, you feel would feed that for this season in your life. But she feels threatened by it because it means that you are going to do something weird, odd, you're going to be out of the home. How she explained it to her friends? Because he was married to Miss Certainty. And her whole certainty is threatened by his need for significance that made him come up with this idea. And of course, men generally, often men don't feel ratified or confirmed or oriented or comfortable in a domestic setting. So I love my wife, love my kids, love my grandkids, but I know if that's all I had in life, I'd go crazy. I need to do other things. I love my grandkids, but I have my cutoff points, as you all will too, as you learn. Because all my grandkids, I've got 8 grandkids, all live 5 minutes from my house. You know, people whose grandchildren are spread out say, oh, it must be wonderful having your grandchildren so close. Because grandchildren believe they're the most important people in the world. So when they come to my house, they don't care what I'm doing. I said to my wife, don't tell them I'm in my office at the end of the house. If they find out, they'll never leave me alone. And once they find me, I can't leave them alone. So we have endless random grandchildren invasions. Like little minions. And when they come and I get into the grandkid thing, I'm realizing that it's affecting my human need, because my top human need at this stage of my life, my main human need is certainty. Now, the worst expression of that human need for me is that I become over-controlling of everything. I want to know what's happening. So for instance, my wife and I were in Stockholm, Sweden, and my wife decides she wants to go on a tourist boat. I hate tourist stuff. But she wants to go on a boat, and the boat takes you around Stockholm, you know, a sightseeing boat tour. But she wants it to be, you know, a certain kind of experience when neither of us know what experience it will be. So she wants to sit outside on the boat, not inside, because we looked at a brochure and saw they're glass covered, but either end, it's outside. She wants to sit outside. I'm thinking, how do I deliver that? I can't promise, you know, you don't book a seat, you just get on the boat, is what I'm seeing on the brochures. So we go down to the harbor, to the place where they're selling tickets, you know, the ticket booth place. So there's a huge line of people. So I get to the kiosk and talk to the guy who doesn't speak English with all my needs for certainty. What time's the boat come? How long's the boat take? Can we sit outside, not inside a boat? You don't understand what I'm talking about. And I'm getting stressed out because there's a line of people that are getting stressed out by me holding them up. And I wanted to get this perfect, because if it's not perfect, I know my wife will let me know. Well, you shouldn't have picked this boat. Which boat was the right one to pick? There's 6 options. So I'm like, my need for certainty is nowhere to be seen. So we go and stand waiting where we're told to wait for the boat. Boat doesn't come. Doesn't come. It's a hot day. I'm hot. I'm thinking, an hour already wasted. An hour already wasted is my internal self-talk. Don't say it out loud, for God's sake. But, you know, 46 years married, don't say it out loud. So I'm like, this is a nightmare. An hour gone, an hour, wasted an hour, just trying to get a boat, the right boat. Boat doesn't come. 15 minutes, boat not here. So this guy comes by on a bicycle saying, oh, are you waiting for the boat? Yeah, it's broken down. There'll be another one along in an hour. Look at my wife. Like, you know, this was your idea. I told you so. You know, without saying it. So we go get a coffee while the boat comes the next hour. So 2 hours have now gone waiting for the boat. The boat shows up. It's full of people already. Inside and outside. So I know what she's thinking. I don't want to get on this boat. It's full of people. Like, how can I control who gets on the boat? I'd like to. So we get on the boat, go right to the back of the boat, to the outside area, full of people. The only place to stand or sit was on an oil can. So I have her sit on the oil can, which is uncomfortable. And then the boat takes off. It's a 3-hour boat ride. The boat spent 45 minutes in a lock. You know what locks are? In a lock. 45 minutes in these massive locks. The lock was twice the size of this room. So you go in, you have to wait for all the other boats to come in. Then the lock gates close behind you. Then the water rises. Then the locks open. 45 minutes sat in a lock on a freaking tour boat. Where's that in the brochure? Huh? It's not there. There was nothing picturesque, there was nothing pretty, sat in the lock. So much of this boat ride was a disaster, and I realize I'm stressing because my need for certainty has gone. I'm going to tell you, you'll find this funny because it's about you guys, but it's about you guys and coming here. So last week, I'm in Australia. I'm scrolling through social media and I see that Jose is in Germany. My favorite translator in the world I have never ever come to you without him translating. Ever. And I'm like, he's in freaking Germany. So I say to myself, oh, it's okay. I know he's going to be back for the weekend. My certainty talk. So I put a comment on his post. You know, when you're in Australia, heading for Jakarta, and your favorite translator is in Germany. Question mark, question mark. Like, reassure me this is not going to be happening. So he mails me, he mails me back on the comments, sorry, won't be there this time. Laugh, laugh emoji. What? What? Laugh, laugh emoji? I'll give you an emoji. My need for certainty was gone. I'm like, Yosef, how could you do this to me? Who is going to be translating for me? Who? Well, I met Johannes yesterday and had lunch with him, told him what I've just told you, told him the story, and we were laughing together. But I realized I did such drama because of my need for certainty. So you must not feel bad about your human need. If you look at this list and think, well, mine's variety, that's why I love adrenaline sports, that's why I love danger, or I love driving to work a different way, or I like trying different foods, or I like, new ideas, new situations. I just can't stand routine. It's worth talking about that before you get married to miss certainty. One of the guys I mentor is an actor based in London, and he won the BAFTA, which is like an Oscar in our country. He won the BAFTA last year for the best newcomer actor. He's a genius, an actor. He's on Netflix now in a series called Marcella on Netflix. So I said to Ray, why did you get into acting? He said, it's a funny question, he said, but when I was a kid at school, I was in a play. But he said, I was like the back of the cast. I didn't have a main part. I was the back of the cast on stage. At the front of the stage, was this blonde, blue-eyed kid that had the main part. And then he had a monologue, like a long monologue in his part. And he said, this kid delivered the monologue so brilliantly. I was just in awe of this kid's ability. And he said, after I saw him do that, I said to myself, I want to do that. He said, and from that day on, I just started getting into school plays, acting. Then I went to acting school, got into, and now he's an actor. He's a movie actor, TV actor. He's the director, producer, blah, blah, blah. So I said, do you realize what happened on stage that day was your need for significance woke up as you saw him being adored by the crowd. It was a human need for significance that led you in to acting. But because he'd framed that as a bad thing in the acting world, he didn't see that as a good need to start from. But it is. So, however it first presents in your children, you parents in here, when you see your kids displaying a certain behavior, try and reframe it on this list of human needs. I was helping a couple recently. Her main human need is love and connection. His main human need was growth and contribution. So he wants to be constantly out, giving, serving, helping people, and she feels he's not there giving her the love and connection she most needs from him. So it's these incompatibility scenarios that don't need to end badly if you'll reframe it as a need for significance or a need for variety. One of my daughters is married to a corporate guy, and I think he went into corporate life because he loves significance and variety. The least of his human needs is certainty. My daughter's human need would be certainty, love and connection. So she's telling me since they moved to America to Denver and learned to ski, he takes her and the two young children on a black ski slope. But none of them can really ski that well. But because he's an adrenaline junkie, loves variety and risk and danger, he gets on the slope. Well, it did not end well for their relationship that night. And her to me about him. Hilarious. And I said, Don, I know you want to kill him. I know you want to murder him. She said, Dad, I'm going to kill him. I said, we could do that, but you go to jail and stuff, so it's, you know. But I said, I think it's no different to the other things he's done that you've had drama about, because I think he has this basic human need for significance and variety. It's a really good thing. And some days it's not a good thing. But when it's not a good thing, don't say it's all a bad thing and shut it down, because you also have a need for certainty, and sometimes with you through your life, that has been a bad way you've expressed it. So if you would free each other and say, I don't think it is a good or a bad thing, I think it is something that needs reframing. I think this new age that I'm trying to tell you about of human flourishing, I think in this new age that's dawning, the human need of love and connection is going to be paramount. So if that's your human need, we really need you in this next era to help us understand how to best meet the human need and how to best express the human need for love and connection. This new age of human flourishing is going to really deepen this need. The world is suffering from massive sense of human connection. We have a massive sense of disconnection, as you all know, across the planet. And the internet has made that far worse. When the internet arrived in our world, human disconnection was already viral. Humans not connecting like we used to already was at an all-time high. Then the internet landed, and then the internet made it so much more worse than it was already. So we've all become addicted to this virtual reality connection, but are all realizing increasingly it is not human connection. New research that I've been studying in depression, which is often a precursor to suicide. In England, I don't know about here or other governments, in England, we recently, last year, appointed a minister of suicide. That's how out of control suicide is, that we need a government minister whose job is to do something about the out of control suicide statistics in our country. Remember now, the suicide data is based on those that killed themselves. So there's millions who we don't know about. Because unless you succeeded in trying to kill yourself, or unless on the way to killing yourself, you finished up in hospital and told someone you tried to kill yourself, or you took an overdose, then you become a statistic. But until you go on the radar that way, we don't know about you. So the field that we do know about is the tip of the iceberg that requires a minister to be appointed, because the governments of the world are realizing suicide is at an all-time high, especially amongst young people, and especially since the arrival of social media. Because if you already feel isolated and alone and ugly and fat or thin or out of shape or unattractive or whatever it is you don't love about yourself, the internet and social media will reinforce that. So since the arrival of social media, depression and suicide are now emerging as far worse than we thought they ever were. So in the Western world, we have treated depression as a chemical issue. So the whole antidepressants pill market is out of control, because we think that depression is a chemical imbalance and the human brain has a lack of serotonin. And antidepressants, you'll have your versions of them like we do in the West. Prozac would be a big one for us in the West. It is coming to compensate for the lack of serotonin that your brain is not giving you enough of. But now we've had these antidepressants long enough to realize that they are not working. On most humans, they're not working. It will give you a temporary balance chemically and give you back temporary serotonin artificially, but it sort of runs its course and people finish up needing bigger doses or more complex antidepressants, and on it goes. And the world are realizing, and I think it's to do with this age of human flourishing, the medical world are realizing we are running out of options. We can't medicate this stuff anymore. Some of you are doctors in here. You know you're writing prescriptions every day for physical symptoms that have non-physical causes. Right. It's stress and unhappiness and depression and anxiety. And it has physical symptoms and we treat it chemically, but it's not going to fix it, because I think it's to do with this massive human need that is being neglected and can't be chemically fixed, of a massive loss of human connection, a massive loss of love and connection between humans. And the problem is that there are hundreds of billions of dollars in the pharmaceutical industry. They have a massive financial stake in you not fixing yourself. If you can get fixed and beat depression without drugs, they're out of business. And because governments are hand in glove with corporates, our governments appoint a minister of suicide, whilst at the same time they are hand in glove corporately with the people producing the drugs. It becomes a vicious circle of let's help the people committing suicide whilst we also continue handing out antidepressants to people who don't need it. Because the age of human flourishing is changing the medical world. They're even recruiting different kinds of people now as doctors. They're recruiting people with huge empathy rather than people with huge scientific abilities. Because they're realizing, if I can sit down with you as a doctor and give you half an hour, no doctor's got time for that. It's 5-minute slots, here's a pill, go. If I can give you a half an hour for you to tell me what is it that's troubling you, then I'm giving you love and connection. You're going to explain to me, I think this happened when, I think this started when. Now we can figure out what are the causes that are producing the effects. I've been studying now for years PTSD and how people struggle to recover from something that happened 20 years ago. You're in no danger anymore of that happening. But because of its imprintedness on the neural circuitry of the trauma, all you need, you see these movies, you know, where the veterans come back from war and they're in the supermarket and a can falls off the shelf and hits the floor and they hit the deck, or they hear fireworks going off and run for cover because it triggers, it's called a retrieval cue. It triggers the trauma. And though they're in no danger, their body tells them we are in danger. And it has this massive chemical dump internally that begins to make them sick again. And so to treat PTSD sufferers with chemicals, we're realizing it's not the answer. It's running out. Y'all okay? So this coming age is going to favor the human need of love and connection. We need more of it. We need you that have this as your primary human need to help us understand how to meet that need. And we need you to become a genius at giving that away to the planet. Corporates, governments, churches, all of these institutions, organizations increasingly will be led by people who understand fundamentally the need for love and connection. I was studying depression recently because of this human needs issue and shift, and read about a farmer. He was a rice farmer in Cambodia, and he lost a limb in an accident, and he had a prosthetic leg fitted, but it meant his work life was over. He couldn't climb up and down the rice paddies anymore. So Western antidepressants had reached Cambodia, and he was being prescribed antidepressants. The people in his village said, no, we don't want him to be taking those westernized ideas of how to fix him. We will take care of him ourselves. We know him. This has happened to others in the past. We know what to do. So what happened is they crowdfunded, we call it now, the village had a collection and crowdfunded buying him a cow. The cow gave him again work that he thought he'd never have again. The cow was in his own backyard. He milked it and made a living off the cow, and he got meaningful work given back to him instead of being in his little house, depressed that he couldn't work anymore, going forever down on himself, and probably committing suicide in a short time. So the cow became an antidepressant. Seriously. That's what the cow did. The cow increased his serotonin, made him happy again, because the cow gave him meaningful work that gave him something to do with his life, that gave him back happiness. I was talking to a friend of mine whose son had gone to jail recently for 6 years. I said, how is he doing? He said, he's 2 years in and he's really depressed. I said, why is he depressed? You know, obvious reasons for that, but I was interested why was he depressed? Because he's a very outgoing, strong, you know, guy. He said he's depressed because he misses his dog or any contact with animals at all. Supposing what one of the things your soul most loves is animals. Then you go to jail or something happens and you're cut off from any contact with an animal. Imagine the damage that would do to your soul, your happiness. So I Googled this issue. America, parts of America have figured out this issue. So in many jails in America, they're getting rescue dogs, giving rescue dogs to long-term prisoners. They're in prison for very bad crimes. These are very violent individuals. And they've realized that if they give them a dog to take care of, so the dog moves into the prison with them. So every day they have to get up and take care of the dog, train the dog, teach the dog, and nurturing and loving the dog has calmed them down and lowered the levels of testosterone. So there's less violence and less fights and less conflict in the jail because the presence of the pets has calmed them in their soul. So the dog becomes an antidepressant. I'll give you one more that's fascinating, then we'll have some questions. I read some research recently, again, thinking of this human needs, the age of human flourishing, and how we're wired different to how the pharmaceutical scientific world tells us often. The experiment where they put rats in a big cage, a large cage, and in the large cage there were two feeders, you know, water feeders to drink from. One was pure water, one was water laced with heroin. In the cage where all the rats were together, none of them drank from the one that had heroin in it. When they took one rat out, put it in a cage on its own, it never drank the pure water. It only drank the heroin water because it was so depressed and lonely without the company of the other rats that it began to get depressed, and its serotonin levels dropped, and it got a high from the heroin that allowed it to pass its time because it was so lonely because of the disconnection from the other rats. When they took that rat, put it back in with the others, it no longer drank the heroin water. In other words, its happiness and our happiness was less about where you drink from and more about the cage you do life in. It's more about who you do life with. It's more about your social connectivity. It's more about your friendships is your happiness than it is about chemicals. And what we've got in the Western world is we've got this, as I said, out of control chemical handing out. And I think this age of human flourishing, we that understand this are going to come into our own. Because we're understanding that if people can find friendship and connection, many people living on their own, these high-rise apartments in the West, you don't even see your neighbor for years. You could be dead. This happens all the time. You're lying dead in your apartment for 6 months. No one knew. Nobody cared. It's typical now of much of our Western societies. And so what I'm saying is, and this is where we, the church, come into our own. Because if we can reach out and love and include people, if we cannot be like this to people, if we cannot be in exclusive religious clubs in the churches we build, if we can love and serve our communities, then we are ourselves becoming our own version of an antidepressant investment in our societies, where we understand love and connection with God, and through that love and connection with God, we express that and extend that out into our communities, is, I think, what we're going to see the world crying out for in the coming years. Y'all okay?